Hello and welcome to the Nimble Newts DataFest presentation. To begin the weekend, our first challenge was to decide what problem we wanted to solve. In the end, we went with this one. Can we predict a student's efficacy in resisting drugs based off of the play to prevent log data? In order to solve our research question, we started by creating a timeline. First, we had to decide what algorithm to utilize. After that, we had to optimize the algorithm to work with the data we had. Lastly, we performed statistical analysis to illustrate the power of our model. The algorithm we chose was TSNE, which stands for T-Distributed Stochastic Neighbor Embedding. The main idea here is that it takes non-linearly separable data and returns it as linearly separable data. It does this through a process called dimensionality reduction. GMM, or Gaussian mixture model, is a way to categorize the linearly separable data into groups. We use this to classify our data into groups that have similar attributes.
This graph displays the amount of variance for each k-value of clusters that we could choose. In order to avoid overfitting or underfitting our data, we use our institution and select groups which k equals to 3. After performing TSNE and our classification model with k equals to 3 groups, this graph was generated. As you can see, we have found 3 distinct groups. Well, it may be hard to tell since almost all of the mean scores were around 4. You may be able to notice that group 3 has the largest difference from the other groups.
The previous graph can be represented more concretely by this table. Here you can see that the average of group 3 is higher than that of groups 1 and 2. This difference illustrates that if you are in group 3, you are more susceptible to drugs. After finding this out through the game, the school district can perform any intervention they find necessary for the student. There are a few limitations that reduce the power of our model. The small variance of S5 mean scores made it difficult to tell which group may actually be more susceptible compared to others. Also, if the surveys in the clinical trial were not answered honestly, this could influence the accuracy of our results. Lastly, if we had slightly more data with more variability, the accuracy in our results could be drastically improved. In conclusion, we find that our model is able to categorize new players into one of 3 groups to predict a student's efficacy in resisting drugs without having any clinical trials.
We believe that there are many more factors associated with risk behaviors. And statistically, nicotine exposure during maternal pregnancy, low socioeconomics at birth, and adverse childhood experience are main factors. In this slide, we put a graph of the theoretical model of risk behavior factors, and the majority of the studies on the factors involved in teenage risk behaviors are cross-sectional or focused on the proximal factors. And that brings us to the end. Thank you for your time and attention.